There is a type of person who walks into a room and everything shifts. No announcement, no dramatic entrance, no raised voice. They simply arrive, and the air changes. Conversations lower. Eyes drift in their direction. Something primal, something ancient, something that cannot be faked, ripples outward from their presence like a stone dropped into still water. You have seen this person. You have felt their weight. And somewhere deep inside, in a place you rarely visit, you asked yourself a question that disturbed you. Why is that not me? That question haunts more people than you realize. It haunts the man who works 60 hours a week and still feels invisible. It haunts the woman who gives everything to everyone and receives nothing but exhaustion in return. It haunts the student, the entrepreneur, the parent, the friend, the lover who smiles on the outside, while something inside them screams that they were built for more than this. And the answer to that question, the real answer, is not what you have been told. It is not confidence. It is not charisma. It is not some genetic lottery you either won or lost at birth. The answer is control. Not the kind of control that grips and squeezes and fights against the current. The opposite. The kind of control that is so deep, so rooted, so absolute that it does not need to grip anything at all. The kind of control that makes you the calmest person in every storm, the sharpest mind in every room, the one variable that no one can predict and no one can break. And this is exactly what Niccolò Machiavelli spent his life decoding. Not for the masses, not for the obedient, for the rare individual willing to look at the world without the comfortable illusions that keep most people asleep. Now, before we go any further, let me tell you what this video is not. This is not motivation. Motivation is a drug that wears off by morning. This is not inspiration. Inspiration is a feeling that evaporates the moment life pushes back. What this is, what you are about to receive over the next hour, is a complete operating system for your mind. A way of seeing, a way of thinking, a way of moving through the world that will make you functionally untouchable. Not because you become aggressive, not because you become cold, but because you become so strategically aware, so internally anchored, that the chaos around you loses its power over you entirely. Let that land for a moment. Imagine a version of yourself that does not flinch, that does not spiral, that does not lose sleep over what someone said, what someone thinks, what someone might do. Imagine walking into the hardest conversation of your life and feeling nothing but clarity. Imagine being betrayed and responding not with rage, not with tears, but with a quiet, surgical precision that leaves the other person wondering what exactly they have unleashed. That version of you is not fantasy. It is architecture. And we are going to build it together, brick by brick, from the ground up. But first, you need to understand why you do not already have this. You need to understand the machine that was built around you before you were old enough to question it. From the moment you were born, you were enrolled in a system, not a school, not a religion, something larger, something invisible. A system designed to produce one thing above all else: compliance. You were taught to raise your hand before speaking. You were taught to wait for permission. You were taught that the good child is the quiet child, the agreeable child, the child who does not challenge, does not question, does not demand. And those lessons did not stop when you grew up. They simply became more sophisticated. Now, instead of a teacher telling you to sit down, it is a boss who punishes initiative. Instead of a parent saying, "Do not talk back," it is a partner who weaponizes silence when you assert yourself. Instead of a schoolyard bully who takes your lunch, it is a social dynamic that quietly excludes you when you refuse to conform. The mechanism is the same, only the packaging has changed, and here is what makes it truly insidious. You do not even know it is happening. You think your anxiety is natural. You think your people-pleasing is kindness. You think your inability to say no is politeness, but it is not. It is programming. Deep, systematic, generational programming designed to keep you reactive, dependent, and small. Machiavelli saw this with terrifying clarity over 5 centuries ago. He watched as entire populations were kept docile through carefully manufactured beliefs about morality, about duty, about what it means to be good. He watched as the powerful used these beliefs as invisible chains, keeping the masses in line while they themselves operated by an entirely different set of rules. And he did something that no one in his era had the audacity to do. He wrote the rules down. Not the rules they told you. The real rules. The ones that actually govern how power moves, how influence works, how control is established and maintained in every interaction between human beings. And those rules were so potent, so dangerously effective, that his work was banned, burned, and condemned for centuries. Not because it was wrong, because it was right, because it worked, because anyone who understood it could no longer be controlled. And that is exactly what you are going to understand today. Not theory, not abstraction. The actual mechanics of how to take command of any situation you find yourself in. Whether it is a corporate boardroom, a family dinner, a street confrontation, or the silent battlefield inside your own mind. Let us start with the foundation, the single most important concept you will learn in this entire video. If you grasp nothing else, grasp this, because everything else is built on top of it. Control begins with perception. Not your perception, theirs. The perception of every person in the room, every person in your life, every person who watches you, evaluates you, and decides in the first 7 seconds of meeting you whether you are someone to be respected or someone to be dismissed. Most people think control is about what you do. It is not. It is about what others believe you are capable of doing. There is a world of difference between the two. A man who can fight but never needs to is more powerful than a man who fights every day. A woman who could destroy you with a single word but chooses silence is more terrifying than one who screams. The president who has nuclear weapons is more powerful for never using them than he would be for launching them. Power is potential, and potential is most potent when it remains unrevealed. Machiavelli understood this at a molecular level. He wrote that it is far better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But most people misread this. They think he was advocating cruelty. He was not. He was advocating mystery. He was saying that the person others cannot quite figure out, the person whose depths remain hidden, the person who might be kind or might be devastating and no one is quite sure which, that person holds all the cards. Think about the people in your life who make you slightly uncomfortable, not the ones who are openly hostile, the quiet ones, the ones who smile but say little, the ones who watch more than they speak, the ones who, when they do speak, say something so precise that it cuts through every layer of pretense. Those people have gravitational pull. You orient yourself around them without realizing it. You choose your words more carefully in their presence. You sit up a little straighter. You perform a little better. Why? Because you cannot read them. And what you cannot read, you cannot control. And what you cannot control, you instinctively respect. This is the first weapon Machiavelli hands you, the weapon of selective opacity. The understanding that you do not owe the world transparency. You do not owe anyone access to your thoughts, your plans, your emotions, or your next move. The modern world tells you to be authentic, to be open, to be vulnerable, and there is a time and place for those things. But there is also a time to be a locked door, a time to be a wall of calm that reveals nothing, a time to let the world wonder about you rather than know about you. Because here is a truth that will save you years of pain. Every piece of information you give someone is a potential weapon in their hands. Every emotion you display is a map to your vulnerabilities. Every reaction you have is data that tells others exactly how to move you, exactly how to push your buttons, exactly how to get under your skin. The person who controls any situation is not the one with the most information. It is the one who reveals the least. Think about negotiations. The salesman who talks too much loses. Why? Because every word is a clue. Every argument is a reveal. The buyer who sits back, says little, asks questions, and lets the silence do the heavy lifting will always have the advantage. Not because they are smarter, because they are invisible, and invisible is unbeatable. Now apply that to your daily life. Think about the last argument you had. How much did you reveal? How much did you say that you did not need to say? How many words came out of your mouth that were not strategic, but emotional? How many sentences were not designed to achieve an outcome, but simply to express a feeling? And how much of what you expressed was used against you, turned around, thrown back in your face? This is not a criticism. This is a mirror. And the reflection might be painful, but it is the first step towards something extraordinary. You see, the untrained mind leaks. It leaks emotions. It leaks intentions. It leaks fears. It leaks desires. And other people, whether they know it consciously or not, are reading those leaks constantly. They feel your anxiety. They sense your desperation. They pick up on your need for approval, like predators pick up on the scent of blood. But the trained mind, the Machiavellian mind, it is a vault. It reveals what it chooses to reveal, when it chooses to reveal it, and to whom it chooses to reveal it. Everything else remains behind a wall of calm, collected, impenetrable stillness. And this is where the real transformation begins. Because learning to control what you project outward starts with controlling what you experience inward. You cannot project calm if your internal world is chaos. You cannot project strength if your mind is a battlefield of doubt and self-recrimination. You cannot project mystery if your emotions are splattered across your face like paint on a canvas. The inner game is everything, and the inner game begins with one brutal realization. Most of what you feel in high-pressure situations is not real. It is a story. It is a narrative constructed by a mind that was programmed to see threats everywhere, to seek approval constantly, and to interpret silence as rejection. When someone does not respond to your message, your mind tells you a story. They are ignoring you. They do not care. You did something wrong. But the reality? They might be busy. They might not have seen it. They might be dealing with their own chaos. The story is not real, but your reaction to the story is. And that reaction shapes everything: your mood, your behavior, your next decision, your entire trajectory. Machiavelli did not use modern psychological language, but he understood this dynamic perfectly. He understood that the prince who reacts to every rumor, every slight, every whisper at court, is the prince who falls. Because reaction is weakness made visible. Every time you react to something that does not deserve your energy, you signal to the world that you can be moved, that you can be shaken, that you are not as solid as you appear. And the world tests this constantly. Life is a series of tests. Your colleague makes a passive-aggressive comment. Test. Your partner gives you the silent treatment. Test. A stranger disrespects you in public. Test. A deal falls through. Test. Someone you trusted betrays you. Test. And every time you react emotionally, every time you lose your composure, every time you let the situation dictate your state, you fail the test. Not in a moral sense, in a strategic sense. You hand the power to whoever or whatever triggered you. But when you pass the test, when you absorb the impact and remain unchanged, something remarkable happens. The people around you recalibrate. They realize, often without conscious thought, that their usual tools do not work on you. Guilt does not move you. Anger does not rattle you. Manipulation does not land. And this recalibration changes everything. It changes how they speak to you. It changes how they treat you. It changes the offers they make and the boundaries they respect. You do not need to announce your strength. You just need to stop announcing your weakness. And for most people, that single shift, the shift from leaking to containing, from reacting to choosing, from being transparent to being strategic, is enough to transform every relationship and every interaction in their life. This is not manipulation. This is sovereignty. This is the decision to stop being a leaf blown around by every wind and to become the mountain that the wind breaks against. And here is the part that Machiavelli knew and that modern culture refuses to teach you. This level of control is not cold. It is not robotic. It is not the death of emotion. It is the mastery of emotion. You still feel everything. You feel the anger, the hurt, the frustration, the fear. But you do not serve those feelings. They serve you. You decide which emotions get expressed and which ones stay locked in the vault. You decide when to show vulnerability and when to show steel. You choose. And choice is freedom. Real freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to respond however you choose, regardless of what the world throws at you. That is what Machiavelli was really writing about. Not cruelty, not deception, freedom. The freedom that comes from understanding the game so deeply that you are no longer played by it. And you are just at the beginning of this understanding. What we have covered so far is the foundation, the philosophical bedrock. But philosophy without application is just words, and words without action change nothing. In what comes next, we are going to take these principles and sharpen them into tools. Specific, tactical, immediately usable tools that you can deploy tomorrow, today, in the very next conversation you have. You will learn how to read people before they speak. How to shift the power dynamic in your favor without saying a word. How to respond to provocation in a way that makes the attacker question themselves. How to enter negotiations and leave with more than you came for. How to build the kind of presence that makes people give you respect before you even ask for it. If what you have heard so far has awakened something, if a part of you is already beginning to see the patterns, to recognize the games, to feel the shift happening inside you, then do not leave, because everything that comes next will take this awakening and forge it into something permanent. The next level is waiting, and you are ready for it. Now that the foundation is set, now that you understand the invisible architecture of control, it is time to go deeper. Because understanding a concept is one thing. Breathing it, living it, making it part of your blood and bone, that is something else entirely. And that is where we are going now. There are 5 traits that separate the person who controls any situation from the person who is controlled by every situation. These are not personality types. They are not gifts. They are skills, forged, sharpened, and refined through deliberate practice. And once you internalize them, you will operate on a level that most people cannot even comprehend. The first trait is emotional sovereignty. This is the ability to experience an emotion without being enslaved by it. Most people think they control their emotions. They do not. Their emotions control them, and they have simply gotten used to the chains. When someone insults them, anger rises, and they obey it. When rejection arrives, sadness descends, and they collapse under it. When uncertainty appears, anxiety takes the wheel and drives them into a ditch of overthinking and paralysis. Emotional sovereignty is not the absence of emotion. That would make you a machine, and machines are predictable. Emotional sovereignty is the space between stimulus and response. It is the half-second between the moment something happens and the moment you decide what to do about it. In that half-second lies your entire power. Widen that gap, even by a fraction, and you change everything. Machiavelli observed this in the leaders he studied. The ones who fell were invariably the ones who let their emotions make their decisions. The duke who declared war because his pride was wounded. The Pope who destroyed alliances because his ego was bruised. The captain who abandoned strategy because his anger demanded immediate satisfaction. Every time, the emotion felt righteous. Every time, the result was ruin. The leaders who endured, the ones whose names survived centuries, were the ones who felt the same emotions but refused to serve them. They felt the anger and let it inform their strategy rather than drive it. They felt the fear and used it as data rather than as a command. They felt the desire for revenge and filed it away for a moment when it could be deployed with precision rather than wasted in a tantrum. You can learn this, not in theory, in practice. The next time you feel an emotion rising, a strong one, the kind that usually takes you over, try something. Do not suppress it. Do not deny it. Simply name it. Say to yourself, silently, "This is anger," or "This is fear," or "This is the need for approval." The moment you name it, you step outside of it. You become the observer rather than the observed. You become the one holding the leash rather than the one being dragged. This is ancient knowledge dressed in modern clothing. The Stoics knew it. The samurai knew it. The Machiavellian prince knew it. And now you know it. But knowing is nothing without doing. So start today. Start in the next conversation. Start with the next email that irritates you, the next comment that stings, the next situation that would normally send you spiraling. Name the emotion. Create the gap. And in that gap, choose your response rather than having your response chosen for you. The second trait is strategic patience. We live in a world that worships speed, fast results, instant gratification, overnight success. And this worship of speed is precisely why most people remain powerless. Because power is not fast. Power is slow. Power is the deep, grinding, unsexy work of positioning yourself correctly over weeks, months, and years, so that when the moment arrives, you are exactly where you need to be. Machiavelli wrote extensively about timing. He understood that the same action, taken at the wrong moment, leads to disaster, and taken at the right moment leads to triumph. The difference is not the action. It is the patience to wait for the perfect alignment of circumstances. Think about the predator in the wild. The lion does not chase every animal it sees. It watches. It waits. It reads the herd, identifies the weak point, calculates the wind direction, measures the distance, and when it moves with such explosive precision that the outcome is decided before the prey even knows it is being hunted. Most people are the opposite of the lion. They are reactive. They see an opportunity and lunge at it without calculation. They feel an urge and act on it without thinking 3 moves ahead. They want the result now, and this impatience costs them everything. The person who texts back immediately because they cannot tolerate the anxiety of waiting. The person who accepts the first offer in a negotiation because they are afraid the deal will disappear. The person who speaks first in a confrontation because silence makes them uncomfortable. All of these are failures of patience, and all of them hand power to whoever is willing to wait longer. Here is the cold truth. In almost every interaction, the person who can wait longer wins. The person who can tolerate the discomfort of silence, the uncertainty of an unanswered question, the tension of an unresolved conflict, that person holds all the leverage. Because the other side will always, eventually, break first. They will fill the silence. They will sweeten the offer. They will reveal their hand. All you have to do is wait. And waiting is not passive. Strategic waiting is the most active thing you can do. While you wait, you observe. You collect data. You let the other person show you who they are, what they want, and where they are vulnerable. Every moment of patience is a moment of intelligence gathering. And intelligence wins wars. Practice this in small ways. When someone asks you a question, do not answer immediately. Take a breath. Let a beat of silence pass. Not awkwardly, deliberately, you will notice something fascinating. The other person becomes slightly unsettled. They lean in. They pay more attention. Because in a world where everyone rushes to fill every silence, the person who is comfortable in the quiet becomes magnetic. The third trait is perceptual dominance. This is the ability to see what others miss, to read a room the way a chess grandmaster reads a board, to notice the micro-expressions, the shifts in tone, the subtle power plays that most people are completely oblivious to. Machiavelli was, above all, a reader of people. He did not build armies. He did not command fleets. He read human nature with such penetrating accuracy that his observations remain devastating 500 years later. He understood that people almost always tell you who they are, if you know how to listen, not to their words. Words are the most unreliable form of communication, to their patterns, to what they do when they think no one is watching, to how they treat people who can do nothing for them, to where their eyes go when they are uncomfortable, to what they avoid talking about. Because avoidance is a spotlight that illuminates exactly what someone is trying to hide. Start paying attention to the things people do not say. Start noticing who in the room makes eye contact and who looks away, who stands tall and who shrinks, who speaks first and who waits, who laughs genuinely and who performs laughter to fit in. These are not trivial details. They are the source code of every social dynamic you will ever encounter. And the person who can read the source code can rewrite the program. Here is a practical exercise. The next time you are in a group setting, stop talking for 15 minutes. Do not contribute. Just observe. Watch the dynamics unfold. Who is leading? Who is following? Who is trying to lead but failing? Where are the alliances? Where are the tensions? Who is performing confidence and who actually has it? You will be amazed at what you see when you stop trying to be seen. The fourth trait is narrative control. This is perhaps the most powerful and the least understood of all 5 traits. Narrative control is the ability to define the story, not the facts. The story, because in the real world, facts are secondary. The story that wraps around those facts is what actually drives behavior, decisions, and outcomes. Machiavelli understood this with a clarity that bordered on terrifying. He knew that a prince could lose a battle and still win the war if he controlled how the battle was perceived. He knew that a ruler could make an unpopular decision and still maintain the loyalty of the people if the narrative around that decision was crafted correctly. Perception is not reality. Perception is more powerful than reality. Think about how this plays out in your life. 2 people apply for the same promotion. They have equal qualifications, equal experience, equal results. But one of them has spent the last 6 months carefully shaping how they are perceived. They have made sure the right people know about their contributions. They have positioned their failures as learning experiences and their successes as team victories. They have built a narrative that says, this person is a leader in the making. The other person has done great work in silence. They have kept their head down, assumed their results would speak for themselves, and waited for someone to notice. Who gets the promotion? You already know. And it is not because the world is unfair. It is because the world runs on stories, and the person who tells the better story wins. Every time. This does not mean lying. Lying is a weak person's version of narrative control. Real narrative control is the art of emphasis. It is knowing which truths to highlight and which to leave in shadow. It is framing your actions in a way that aligns with what people already want to believe. It is being the author of your own reputation rather than leaving it to the interpretation of others. The 5th trait is detachment from outcome. This is the one that will challenge you the most, because it seems to contradict everything else. If you want to control situations, how can you be detached from outcomes? Here is how. The moment you become attached to a specific outcome, you become predictable. And the moment you become predictable, you become controllable. If I know that you desperately want this job, I can lowball the salary. If I know that you desperately want this relationship to work, I can push your boundaries. If I know that you desperately need my approval, I can withhold it and watch you dance. Attachment is vulnerability. And in the world of strategic interaction, vulnerability is only useful when it is chosen, never when it is compulsive. Machiavelli's prince did not cling to any single outcome. He had preferences, yes. He had goals, certainly. But he held them loosely. If Plan A failed, he moved to Plan B with the same calm precision. If an alliance crumbled, he formed a new one without mourning the old. If a strategy proved wrong, he abandoned it, without ego, without shame, without the sunk cost fallacy that traps lesser minds in failing courses of action. This is not indifference. Indifference is the absence of care. Detachment is the presence of care combined with the absence of desperation. You care about the outcome, but you do not need it. You want the result, but your identity is not dependent on achieving it. This distinction is everything. When you enter a negotiation detached from outcome, you negotiate from strength. When you enter a relationship detached from outcome, you love from wholeness rather than neediness. When you enter a conflict detached from outcome, you respond from strategy rather than ego. And the paradox, the beautiful, infuriating paradox, is that detachment from outcome almost always produces better outcomes. Because the person who does not need to win is the person who wins most often. The person who can walk away from the table has the most power at the table. The person who does not need the relationship is the one the other person fights hardest to keep. Machiavelli saw this paradox clearly. The prince who was willing to lose his throne was the prince most likely to keep it. Because willingness to lose eliminates fear, and the absence of fear eliminates mistakes, and the absence of mistakes produces victory. Now let us take these 5 traits and see how they work together in the real world. Because in isolation, each trait is powerful. Combined, they are devastating. Imagine you are walking into a negotiation, a high-stakes meeting where the outcome matters deeply to you, your career, your financial future, perhaps even your sense of self-worth. The old you would walk in anxious, over-prepared, rehearsing lines, hoping things go your way. The old you would talk too much, agree too quickly, and leave feeling like you gave away more than you gained. But the new you, the version of you that has internalized these 5 traits, walks in differently. You walk in with emotional sovereignty, which means the tension in the room does not affect your internal state. You walk in with strategic patience, which means you are in no rush to speak, to agree, or to close. You walk in with perceptual dominance, which means you are reading every person at the table, noticing who is nervous, who is bluffing, who has authority, and who is performing it. You walk in with narrative control, which means you have already thought about how to frame your position in a way that aligns with what the other side wants to hear. And you walk in with detachment from outcome, which means you are genuinely willing to walk away. And that willingness radiates from you like heat from a flame. The result? You do not chase. You attract. You do not argue. You position. You do not plead. You present. And the other side, without fully understanding why, finds themselves wanting to give you what you want. Not because you manipulated them, because you showed up as someone who clearly does not need them, and that made you irresistible. This dynamic applies everywhere. In job interviews, in confrontations, in friendships, in romantic relationships, in family dynamics. In every single interaction where 2 or more human beings are negotiating, consciously or unconsciously, for position, power, and respect. Let me show you how this plays out in relationships, because this is where most people hemorrhage power without realizing it. You are in a relationship. Things are good, but something feels off. Your partner has been distant, less affectionate, less engaged. The old you panics. The old you starts asking what is wrong, starts over-texting, starts trying harder, starts doing more. And every single one of those actions makes the problem worse. Why? Because each one communicates the same message. I need you more than you need me. And the moment that message is received, the power dynamic shifts. You become the pursuer, and they become the one being pursued. And no one respects what chases them. The Machiavellian response: pull back, not out of spite, not as a game, but because your emotional sovereignty tells you that their distance is not your emergency. Your strategic patience tells you that reacting immediately will only make things worse. Your perceptual dominance tells you to observe the pattern before diagnosing the problem. Your narrative control tells you to maintain the version of yourself that is whole, complete, and unshaken. And your detachment from outcome tells you that if this relationship ends, you will survive. You will be fine. You will rebuild. And something remarkable happens when you pull back from this place of genuine internal strength rather than performative indifference. The other person feels the shift. They feel the space you have created. And in that space, they suddenly have room to miss you, room to wonder, room to recognize what they are risking by being distant. You did not beg. You did not chase. You did not even address the problem directly. You simply recalibrated your own energy, and the entire dynamic reorganized itself around your stillness. This is not a theory. This is how power works in intimate relationships. It is how power has always worked. And the people who understand it navigate love with grace, while the people who do not understand it repeat the same painful patterns for decades. The same principle applies in professional environments. The employee who is always available, always eager, always saying yes to everything, is the employee who gets taken for granted. Not because they are bad at their job, because they have communicated, through 1,000 small actions, that they have no boundaries, no limits, and no self-respect. They are the office equivalent of a doormat, and no one promotes a doormat. But the employee who is excellent and selective, who delivers exceptional work, but does not chase recognition, who helps when it is strategic but says no when their boundaries are tested, that employee becomes a puzzle, and puzzles fascinate people. Puzzles get promoted. Puzzles get respected, because the organization cannot quite figure them out. And what you cannot figure out, you handle with care. Machiavelli wrote that a prince should be a combination of the lion and the fox. The lion for strength, the fox for cunning. Most people are neither. They are sheep pretending to be lions, all roar and no substance. Or they are rabbits pretending to be foxes, too afraid to be clever because cleverness requires risk. But you, if you commit to what you are learning here, will be both. The lion when strength is needed, the fox when subtlety is required, and the silent observer when the best move is no move at all. This is the second layer of Machiavellian mastery. The first layer was understanding that control begins with perception. This layer is understanding that control is maintained through traits that are not born, but built. Emotional sovereignty, strategic patience, perceptual dominance, narrative control, detachment from outcome. Master these 5, and you will walk through the world as a different species. Not better in a moral sense. Better in a strategic sense. Sharper, calmer, more aware. More dangerous in the way that a person who cannot be manipulated is always dangerous to those who rely on manipulation. But the coldest move, the most tactical and immediately useful part of everything you are learning, is still ahead. Because what comes next is not philosophy. It is a field manual. Specific tactics, specific scripts, specific scenarios that will show you exactly how to deploy these traits in the moments that matter most. You are curious. I can feel it. And that curiosity is about to be rewarded in ways you cannot yet imagine. Stay. This is where the blade gets sharpened. Everything you have learned so far has been preparation. the philosophy, the traits, the mindset shifts. All of it was designed to rewire the way you see the world. But now, we enter the arena. Now we take the blade we have been forging and put it in your hand. This is where theory becomes action, where understanding becomes execution, and where the distance between who you were an hour ago and who you will be when this video ends becomes permanent. Let us start with the situation that destroys more people than any other. Confrontation. Not physical confrontation. The kind that is far more common and far more damaging. Verbal confrontation. Emotional confrontation. The kind that happens in offices, in living rooms, in text messages, in family gatherings. The kind that leaves you replaying the interaction at 3 a.m, thinking of all the things you should have said. Here is the first tactical principle. The person who escalates loses. Always, without exception. When someone attacks you verbally, they are operating from emotion. They want you to match their energy. They want you to rise to their level of chaos, because chaos is the only arena where they feel powerful. The moment you escalate with them, you have entered their world, and in their world, they have home advantage. So what do you do instead? You de-escalate strategically, not by backing down, not by agreeing with them, not by apologizing for something you did not do. You de-escalate by lowering your voice, slowing your speech, and saying less. Here is a specific script you can use. Someone confronts you aggressively, maybe a colleague, maybe a partner, maybe a stranger. They are loud, they are accusatory, they are expecting a fight. You look at them calmly and say, in a voice that is noticeably quieter than theirs, "I hear you. And when you are ready to have this conversation without the volume, I will be here." Then you stop talking. You do not defend yourself. You do not explain. You do not justify. You make the statement, and you hold your ground in silence. What happens next is almost mechanical. The other person has two choices. They either continue escalating, which now looks absurd, because you have clearly shown that you are not participating in the chaos, or they lower their energy to match yours, which means you have just controlled the frame without raising your voice by a single decibel. This works because of a psychological principle that Machiavelli understood intuitively. People mirror the emotional state of the most controlled person in the room, not the loudest, the most controlled. If you are the anchor of calm, everyone else drifts toward you. If you are a node of chaos, everyone else escalates with you. Choose to be the anchor, every single time. Now let us talk about a situation that is more subtle, but equally important: being tested. People test you constantly. Your boss tests you to see if you will accept more work without complaint. Your friends test you to see if you will always be available. Your partner tests you to see how far they can push before you push back. These tests are rarely conscious. They are primal, instinctive, hardwired into human social behavior. But whether they are conscious or not, how you respond determines how you are treated. Here is the second tactical principle. Failing a test once sets a precedent. And precedents are extraordinarily difficult to reverse. If you say yes to unreasonable overtime once without pushback, you have established that you will accept unreasonable overtime. If you tolerate disrespect once without consequence, you have established that disrespect is acceptable. If you abandon your plans once because someone guilted you into it, you have established that guilt is an effective tool for controlling you. The response: set the boundary early, set it clearly, and set it without emotion. Here is how this sounds in practice. Your boss drops extra work on your desk at 5 p.m. on a Friday. The old you says, "Sure, I will get it done," and spends the weekend resentful. The Machiavellian you says, "I can take this on, and I want to give it the attention it deserves. I will start on it Monday morning and have it to you by Wednesday." Does that work? No apology, no over-explanation, no guilt. Just a clear, calm redirect that communicates, I am willing to work, but I will not be exploited. And I decide my own timeline. Notice what you did not do. You did not say no aggressively. You did not complain. You did not explain your weekend plans or justify your personal time. You simply set the terms. And by setting the terms calmly, you communicated that you are someone who operates from boundaries, not from desperation to please. This approach scales to every area of your life. A friend who constantly cancels plans at the last minute. Instead of sulking or pretending you do not care, you say, I value our time together, and last-minute changes make that difficult. Let me know when you are sure you can commit, and we will set something up. You have not attacked them. You have not created drama. You have simply communicated your standard. And standards, delivered calmly and consistently, reshape how people treat you faster than any argument ever could. Now let us move to one of the most powerful tactical scenarios. The moment someone tries to manipulate you through guilt. Guilt is the most common weapon in the human emotional arsenal. It is used by parents, partners, friends, colleagues, and strangers. It is so pervasive that most people do not even recognize it when it is happening. They just feel a vague sense of obligation, a heaviness in the chest, a compulsion to comply that feels like duty, but is actually coercion. Here is what guilt manipulation looks like. After everything I have done for you, this is how you treat me. Or, I guess I just do not matter to you. Or, fine, I will just do it myself, like I always do. These phrases are not expressions of genuine hurt. They are strategic deployments designed to make you feel bad enough to abandon your position. The Machiavellian response to guilt manipulation is devastatingly simple. Acknowledge the feeling without accepting the frame. Here is what this sounds like. Someone says, after everything I have done for you, you cannot even do this one thing. You respond, I appreciate everything you have done. That is separate from this situation, and I have made my decision for reasons I am comfortable with. Then you stop. You do not elaborate. You do not apologize. You do not justify. What you have done is surgically separate two things the manipulator was trying to fuse together, their past actions and your present decision. By acknowledging their contribution, without letting it leverage your current choice, you disarm the guilt without creating conflict. They may try again. Guilt manipulators often do, because it has worked on everyone else in their life. But when it stops working on you, when they realize that this tool no longer produces the desired result, they will either escalate, which reveals their true nature, or they will adapt, which means you have successfully retrained the dynamic. Let us move to another critical scenario. How to handle a direct insult or personal attack. Someone attacks you, not subtly, directly. Maybe in front of others, maybe in private. They say something designed to wound. The old you either fires back or absorbs the hit and bleeds internally for days. The new you does neither. The Machiavellian response to a direct insult is the non-response that speaks volumes. You pause. You look at the person. You let one full beat of silence pass. Then you do one of two things. Option 1. You move on as if they said nothing. You literally continue the conversation from the point before they spoke. This is the nuclear option. It communicates that their attack was so insignificant, so beneath your notice, that it did not even register. To the attacker, this is devastating. They wanted a reaction. They got a void. Option 2. If the setting requires you to address it, you use what I call the mirror. You look at them calmly and say, that was an interesting choice of words. Then you pause and let the silence land. You do not explain what you meant by that. You do not elaborate. You just let the statement hang in the air like smoke. The attacker is now in a bind. They are the ones who feel exposed. They are the ones wondering what you are thinking. They are the ones who have been knocked off balance because your response was not what they expected. And the unexpected is the most unsettling thing in human interaction. Both options work, because they violate the attacker's script. Every person who launches an insult has a pre-written internal script of how the interaction will go. They expect anger, defense, hurt, or submission. When you give them none of those, you crash their program. And in the moment of confusion that follows, you own the room. Now, let us address a scenario that many people struggle with more than open conflict: the silent treatment. The silent treatment is one of the most psychologically potent forms of control. It works because it triggers the primal fear of abandonment. When someone you care about goes silent, your nervous system reads it as a survival threat. You feel anxious. You feel desperate. You feel the overwhelming urge to fix it, to reach out, to apologize, even when you have done nothing wrong. And that urge is exactly what the person giving you the silent treatment is counting on. The Machiavellian response? Match their silence. But not from a place of retaliation, from a place of sovereignty. When someone goes silent to control you, the worst thing you can do is chase them. Every text you send, every call you make, every attempt to bridge the gap reinforces their power. It tells them that silence works, that they can shut you out and you will come crawling back. Instead, let the silence breathe. Go about your life. Fill your time with things that feed your growth. Do not perform your indifference on social media. Do not make passive-aggressive posts. Just be genuinely, authentically okay with the silence. Not because you do not care, but because you understand that your peace is not contingent on anyone else's willingness to communicate. And when they eventually break the silence, because they will, because the person who deploys the silent treatment is never prepared for someone who does not crack, you set the terms of re-engagement. You say something like, "I am glad you are ready to talk. Going forward, I need us to communicate directly rather than through silence. That does not work for me." Calm, clear, no anger, no punishment. Just a standard, delivered from a place of unshakable self-respect. Let us shift now to one of the most overlooked tactical environments: group dynamics. Every group of people, whether it is a team meeting, a dinner party, a social gathering, has an invisible hierarchy. Most people unconsciously accept whatever position they are assigned in this hierarchy, but you are not most people, not anymore. The key to dominating group dynamics is contribution without desperation. The person who talks the most in a group is rarely the person who leads the group. The person who leads is the one who speaks only when they have something worth saying. And when they speak, the room pauses. That is the energy you are cultivating. Here is how you implement this. In your next group interaction, follow the 2-to-1 rule. For every 2 times you listen, speak once, and when you speak, make it count. Do not filler. Do not ramble. Do not repeat what someone else said in different words just to be included. Make a point that shifts the conversation. Ask a question that makes people think. Offer a perspective that no one has considered. Then go back to listening. What this does is establish you as the signal in a sea of noise. People start to anticipate your contributions. They start to wonder what you are thinking during the silences. They start to assign you weight, significance, gravity. Not because you asked for it, because you earned it through scarcity. And there is a deeper layer here. In group dynamics, there is always someone testing the hierarchy. Someone who makes a joke at your expense. Someone who interrupts you. Someone who subtly tries to position themselves above you. When this happens, do not compete on their terms. Reframe. If someone interrupts you, stop speaking. Wait for them to finish. Then say, "As I was saying," and continue from exactly where you left off. This is a small move, but its impact is enormous. It communicates that their interruption was a temporary inconvenience, not a power play. It puts you back in the driver's seat without conflict. If someone makes a joke at your expense, use the laser response. Look at them, hold for a beat, Then say, "That was creative." No laugh, no reciprocation, just a calm acknowledgement that translates to, "I see what you did," and it did not land. Then continue with whatever you were doing. These micro-interactions seem small, but they are the building blocks of social dominance. Every group dynamic is decided by dozens of these tiny moments, and the person who handles them with grace and precision rises to the top naturally, without ever appearing to compete. Now let us talk about a specific and dangerous trap that many intelligent people fall into: the trap of over-explaining. When you feel misunderstood, the instinct is to explain more, to add detail, to clarify, to make sure the other person really gets it. But over-explaining is one of the fastest ways to destroy your authority in any situation. Here is why. When you explain once, you are communicating. When you explain twice, you are clarifying. When you explain 3 or more times, you are begging. You are telling the other person, through your persistence, that their understanding matters more to you than your own peace. And that is a power transfer. Machiavelli's prince never over-explained. He stated his position, and he moved on. If others did not understand, that was their problem, not his. Because the person who needs to be understood by everyone is a person who derives their sense of self from external validation. And external validation is a prison disguised as freedom. The tactical rule: state your position once, clearly and without excess. If asked to clarify, clarify once. If asked again, say, "I have said what I mean. Let me know when you have had time to think about it." Then move on. Whether they agree, disagree, or still do not understand is no longer your concern. You communicated. What they do with that communication is on them. Let me give you one more critical scenario, perhaps the most important of all: how to maintain control when you are wrong. This is where most people collapse entirely. They either deny the mistake, which makes them look dishonest and defensive, or they over-apologize, which makes them look weak and desperate for forgiveness. Both responses fail. Both responses hand power to the other side. The Machiavellian approach to being wrong is direct acknowledgement without self-destruction. It sounds like this: "I was wrong about that. Here is what I'm going to do to fix it." No excuses, no sob story, no groveling, no spiral of self-blame designed to make the other person feel sorry for you. This approach is devastating because it is so rare. Most people have never seen someone own a mistake with complete calm and immediately pivot to solutions. It is disarming. It commands respect. It communicates that you are someone whose identity is not threatened by imperfection, and that kind of internal security is magnetic. Machiavelli knew that the prince who admits a mistake quickly and moves to correct it retains far more authority than the prince who denies, deflects, and clings to a false version of events. Because denial is transparent, everyone sees through it, and the effort to maintain a lie costs 10 times more energy than the honesty required to simply say, "I got it wrong, and here is the path forward." Remember this: strength is not perfection. Strength is the ability to absorb impact, admit fault when fault exists, and continue moving forward without losing your center. The person who can do this in real time in front of others, under pressure, is the person who controls the room. Not because they are flawless, because they are unbreakable. These are the tools. These are the scripts. These are the exact moves you make in the moments that define how the world treats you. Each one is a brick in the fortress of your new identity. And every time you use one, every time you choose the strategic response over the reactive one, you strengthen the architecture of control that Machiavelli spent his life studying. But there is one more layer, one final transformation that ties everything together and makes it permanent. It is not a tactic. It is not a script. It is something deeper, something that changes not just how you act, but who you are. And it is waiting for you in the final chapter of this journey. You have been listening for a long time now. And if you are still here, if you have absorbed what has been said rather than simply heard it, then something inside you has already shifted. You may not have words for it yet. You may not be able to point to the exact moment it happened. But the person who pressed play on this video is not the same person sitting here now. Something has cracked open. Something has rearranged. And what is emerging from that rearrangement is something the old you would barely recognize. Let me describe who you are becoming, because it is important that you see it clearly. You are becoming the person who walks into a room and does not need it to validate them. You are becoming the person who listens more than they speak, and when they speak, the room falls quiet. You are becoming the person who can sit with silence without squirming, who can absorb an insult without flinching, who can lose without crumbling, and win without gloating. You are becoming the person who does not chase, not love, not approval, not opportunities, not attention. You are becoming the person who attracts, simply by the gravity of who they are and the depth of how they carry themselves. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is loud. Arrogance is brittle. Arrogance is the armor of the deeply insecure. What you are stepping into is something else entirely. It is quiet. It is dense. It is the kind of presence that does not announce itself because it does not need to. It is the weight of a person who has looked inward, done the difficult work of confronting their own patterns, and emerged with a clarity that cannot be faked. And here is what makes this transformation permanent, rather than a temporary high that fades by tomorrow. It is not based on motivation. It is not based on feeling good. It is based on identity. You are not learning to act differently. You are learning to be differently. And when the shift happens at the level of identity, no external circumstance can reverse it. You do not unlearn how to see. You do not forget what the game looks like once you have seen it from above. Think back to who you were before this video. Think about the situations that used to unravel you. The confrontation you dreaded, the rejection that haunted you for weeks, the silent treatment that sent you spiraling, the manipulation that you did not even recognize until it was too late, the group dynamic where you felt invisible, the negotiation where you walked away feeling like you gave away too much. Now think about those same situations through the lens of everything you have learned. The confrontation is no longer a threat. It is a test, and you know exactly how to pass it. The rejection no longer defines you. It is data, and data does not wound you. The silent treatment no longer controls you. It is a strategy, and you recognize it, which means it has lost its power. The manipulation no longer works. You see the strings, and seeing them means they can no longer pull you. The group dynamic is no longer intimidating. It is a game board, and you know how to read every piece. The negotiation is no longer a gamble. It is a choreography, and you are leading the dance. This is the transformation, not a change in circumstance, a change in operating system. You are running on different software now, and the world will respond accordingly. But I want to go even deeper, because there is a paradox at the heart of everything Machiavelli taught. A paradox that most people never grasp, and it is this. The ultimate form of control is the willingness to release control. Stay with me, because this is the most important thing you will hear today. The person who grips too tightly always loses. The prince who hoards power always falls. The leader who micromanages always fails. The lover who clings always drives the other person away. Control, when it becomes obsessive, becomes its own prison. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote about it with a subtlety that is often missed by those who read him superficially. He did not advocate for total domination. He advocated for strategic flexibility, the ability to hold power lightly, to adapt when the situation demands it, to release one position and take another with the same calm precision, to understand that true power is not a clenched fist, but an open hand that can close at any moment, and everyone knows it. This is the difference between the tyrant and the sovereign. The tyrant rules through force and crumbles the moment force is insufficient. The sovereign rules through adaptability and endures because they cannot be pinned to a single strategy. In your life, this means something very practical. It means knowing when to assert and when to yield, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to fight and when to walk away, when to hold your ground and when to let the other person think they have won, because you know that the real victory is 3 moves ahead. It means understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a relationship is to say, "You are right." Not because you are weak, but because your ego is not running the show. Because you recognize that conceding a battle to win a war is the mark of a master, not a subordinate. It means understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a professional setting is to let someone else take the credit. Not because you do not deserve it, but because you are playing a longer game. Because you know that the person who takes the credit now becomes predictable, while you, the silent architect, remain invisible and therefore untouchable. It means understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in a moment of crisis is nothing. Absolutely nothing. To sit in the chaos and wait. To let the situation reveal itself while everyone else scrambles. To trust that your clarity, your patience, your refusal to react will eventually position you to act with devastating precision when the moment is right. This is the highest level of Machiavellian mastery. Not control for the sake of control. Control for the sake of freedom. The freedom to choose your response. The freedom to operate without being jerked around by your emotions, your fears, your need for validation. The freedom to stand in the middle of any storm and feel nothing but calm. And that calm, that deep, unshakable calm, is the most attractive and the most terrifying thing a human being can possess. Attractive because people are drawn to stability in a world of chaos. Terrifying because a person who cannot be rattled cannot be defeated. Let me consolidate what you have received today, because the architecture of this knowledge deserves to be seen as a whole. First, you learned that control begins with perception, that the person who manages how they are perceived manages the outcome of every interaction, that revealing less is almost always more powerful than revealing more, that the mystery of who you are is worth more than any declaration of what you can do. Second, you learned the 5 traits of the person who commands any situation. Emotional sovereignty. The ability to feel without being controlled by what you feel. Strategic patience. The ability to wait when others rush. Perceptual dominance. The ability to see what others miss. Narrative control. The ability to shape the story rather than be written into someone else's. And detachment from outcome. The ability to want without needing. Third, you learned specific, deployable tactics for the situations that matter most. How to handle confrontation without escalation. How to set boundaries without drama. How to neutralize guilt manipulation with a single sentence. How to respond to insults in a way that transfers all the power back to you. How to navigate group dynamics without competing. How to admit fault without losing authority. And fourth, you have arrived at the paradox that binds everything together, that the ultimate control is the willingness to release control. That flexibility, not rigidity, is the true expression of power. That the open hand which can close at any moment is feared and respected more than the fist that never opens. This is not a collection of tricks. This is a philosophy of being. It is how Machiavelli lived. It is how the most powerful minds in history have operated. And now it is yours. But knowledge without implementation is a museum piece. Beautiful to look at, useless in the real world. So, let me give you a challenge. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. In your very next interaction, whether it is a conversation, a text message, a meeting, a moment with a friend or stranger. Apply one thing you learned here. Just one. Maybe it is the pause before you respond. Maybe it is the boundary you have been afraid to set. Maybe it is the silence you have been afraid to hold. Maybe it is the detachment from an outcome you have been desperately clinging to. Choose one thing, apply it once, and pay attention to what happens, not just externally, internally. Pay attention to how it feels to choose your response rather than having it chosen for you. Pay attention to the power that floods back into your body when you stop leaking it through reactive emotions and compulsive behavior. That single moment of application is worth more than 10 hours of theory, because in that moment you will feel it, not as a concept, as a reality. And once you feel it, you will never go back. You will never be able to unsee the game. You will never be able to pretend that you are powerless again. And that is the point of everything you have heard today. You are not powerless. You never were. You are just untrained. You were running on software that was designed to keep you compliant, not to make you sovereign. And today, you upgraded. Today, you replaced the old operating system with something that the architects of your conditioning never wanted you to have. Awareness. Strategic, cold, beautiful awareness. Machiavelli did not write for the comfortable. He did not write for the people who want easy answers and soothing words. He wrote for the ones who are willing to stare into the uncomfortable truth of how the world works and use that truth as fuel for their own transformation. He wrote for the ones who are tired of being played and ready to become players. He wrote for you. And if this message has resonated, if something in these words has lit a fire that was waiting for a spark, then I want you to do something. Comment below the phrase, "I am the stillness in the storm." This is not just a comment, it is a declaration, a quiet, irreversible statement to yourself and to the universe that you are no longer the person who reacts, who chases, who crumbles. You are the person who remains, the person who endures, the person who controls any situation not through force, not through volume, not through manipulation, but through the sheer, unstoppable power of being unshakable. And when you subscribe to this channel, know that you are not pressing a button. You are entering a fortress, a place where we do not trade in feel-good platitudes or hollow motivation, a place where we sharpen minds, forge strategies, and build the kind of internal strength that the outside world cannot touch. Every video is a weapon. Every lesson is a brick in the wall of your sovereignty. And every person who is here, who stays, who commits, is part of something that the average world will never understand. This is not for everyone. It was never meant to be. It is for the few who look at the world as it is, not as they wish it were, and decide to master it on their own terms. Go now. Walk into the next room, the next conversation, the next challenge with the knowledge you carry. Let your silence speak for you. Let your calm unsettle those who expected chaos. Let your presence be the answer to every question they were afraid to ask. And remember this, always. The person who controls themselves controls everything, not through domination, through sovereignty, not through noise, through gravity, not through the desperate need to win, but through the quiet certainty that no matter what happens, they will remain. Machiavelli knew it. The Stoics knew it. The greatest minds in human history knew it. And now, so do you. Go, and let your stillness be your weapon, not your weakness. Let your patience be your blade, not your burden. And let the world wonder what exactly it is about you that changed, while you, from the depths of your silent knowing, simply smile. Because you know. And that is enough. You have come this far. The last step is the one that changes everything.